And we are live. It's the Mindstate Marketing Hour with our favorite scientist, Will Leach. He doesn't wear a lab coat, he wears a leather jacket. And our special guest today, Mehrab Reza, CEO of Adlantica. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Hey there,
Hey
Steve.
guys,
Thanks for having me once again, the weekly Mindstate Marketing Hour. Mehrab, it's good to see you too, buddy.
nice
So,
seeing you as well.
so we got a little background music. I'm going to cut it now. That's called Feeding the Ducks for those that want to put that on their playlist. I'm Steve Brown, your co-host, and today we're going to talk about two failures and a success with Mehrab Reza. So, Will, you want to give us the backstory how you bumped into this gentleman and why he's on the show today?
I will. So I don't even know if he even knows this. Maybe he knows this, maybe he doesn't. So you get all these kind of these ads and stuff like saying how to do LinkedIn marketing really well and everything else, and I always ignore that stuff, but it actually worked. Not because Mehrab actually used LinkedIn. I don't think he used LinkedIn marketing, but he was doing these posts on LinkedIn. Remember that? And I remember I watched him one time and I said, this guy is really smart, man. And so I agreed with what he's saying. I'm like, this is great. So I think I probably commented, and then he commented back. And I think we kind of got, it's kind of like when you're dating a little bit, you throw a little comment, look, he throws it back, throw another one. And then he reached out and he said, hey, I'm in Dallas. Like, holy crap, I'm in Dallas. So we went and had lunch and just kind of hit it off. And I was always really, really impressed with two things. One is Mehrab is incredibly thoughtful in his work, and that really grabbed me. But for you, Steve, this is something you can learn. This dude is smooth.
I know.
He's smooth. Like the way he delivers his commentary and his stuff, it's just like you want him in a disaster with you, man. Because you and I would freak out. The earthquake happens, you and me, we're freaking out. We're gonna start eating people within the first 30 minutes.
Yes.
We don't know what we're doing. Mehrab, man, he's just smooth. He exudes confidence, thoughtfulness. I always wanted to have him on the show, and we were lucky enough to bring him in today to talk a little bit about his journey in advertising. He's an entrepreneur and a fast-growing entrepreneur, and talk a little bit about his life, and learn a little bit about some of the things that he may have learned through some tribulations, some failures, and some successes, but just learn a little bit more about who he is and what he does. So, Mehrab, that's how I know you. Didn't know if you knew that or not. But
Will,
that's the story. Yeah.
Will, did you know that Mehrab and I have a backstory as well?
I did not know you guys have a backstory. What's that? What? This is
Yeah, we have a connection as well. There's this vibrant, smart community of story brand folks. And so Mehrab and I are in an actual subset of that group called the Texas Story Brand Guides Group. And that's where we know each other as well.
Nice. There we go, man. Connections. What's that game? The Kevin Bacon thing? Are we kind of like that now? We're getting pretty close, man.
Yeah, the seven steps or something like that, right?
Yeah, it's all. Sorry,
so
we go
cool.
off on these little tangents. Sorry, Mehrab.
It's all right. It sounds like I get around.
Yeah, you do. You do. Hey, let me quickly. I'm gonna do a quick introduction, but if you don't mind, right after that, just tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you're doing today. So, Mehrab Reza is the founder of Adlantica. It's a marketing and advertising agency based in Dallas, Texas, where I am also. He started his agency in 2018, and it was only staffed by 2 people. And 5 years later, it's become one of the fastest growing agencies with 5-year revenue growth of 2,550%. Big time growth. I'm sure you learned a lot of things along the way as well. Something that helped you differentiate yourself amongst lots of other ones. So, Mehrab, thank you so much for coming on the show, and tell our audience a little bit about your journey and kind of what you're doing today.
Oh, thank you. Well, Will, I wanted to first start off by saying that those posts that you complimented, I literally, like very soon after posting those, thought that, man, these are stupid. These suck. I'm not going to post these anymore. And then I stopped, and I've been like MIA for like over a year. But definitely,
I noticed.
yeah, it's not because it's good problems. I haven't had time to, post anything, or even though I write stuff, I just don't post it. And it's because, yes, our agency has really grown and has taken off. One of the hardest times that I experienced professionally was like right when the pandemic hit, and our quarterly revenue went down by like 400%. It was a huge hit, and it was very hard to recover from that because brands were scared. They were scared to advertise. People didn't know what was going to happen. There was so much uncertainty, and they just pulled back their marketing spend, their advertising spend, and they just was like, "Hey, we're going to put a pause on everything." And one thing I learned from that, it's not really like a fail or like a success, but it's like one thing I learned from that is that um, whenever things get hard, like marketing or advertising is the first thing that brands will just put a stop to. And I realize that it's mainly because it's the easiest thing to stop. It's a lot easier than layoffs. It's a lot easier than, not paying employees or firing people or downsizing and shutting down, stores or things like that, or discontinuing products or cutting expenses in other ways. It's the easiest expense to cut is just to say, we're going to stop spending. And so agencies really have to be aware of that, and they have to plan for that. They have to prepare for that. And ever since then, I never waited for a calamity to like befall our client, or bad news to come to our client, unless we were the ones to bring it to them first and then tell them how to get through it. And that is really what helped us grow. We brought up the fact that, there's going to be inflation, and this is what it's going to mean, and this is what we have to do, and there's going to be a recession, and this is what it means, and this is what we have to do. And we saw that when we did that, they weren't scared to ride that wave.
Yeah, that's I experienced similar things. It's really unsettling for both sides, right? And that's how Will and our relationship actually started. I reached out to Will and said, let's do something different here. Let's get going, and here we are. We're on this live stream.
Yep, very much so. What's funny also, guys, is I don't know if you know that there, and Mehrab, you probably do. There's a ton of data that tells us that during these kind of times, whether it's economic turmoil or in the case of the pandemic, where advertising spend is pulled, it impacts the brand multiple times in the negative. It's those brands that keep investing. I know it sounds very kind of a bit kind of self-serving, but the data is very clear from academics that are saying that those brands that continue to invest do much better 5 years out, like astronomically better. But to your point, it's not the easy decision. It's a very tough decision to make, but there's a lot of data that suggests you should. Procter & Gamble is one of the classic companies that did so well during the last two economic downturns because their CMOs have been brave enough to basically say and fight hard for ad spend, and it's known throughout the industry. And not everyone, in fact, very few people do it. That's
this is my favorite case. These are my favorite case studies because it not only helps our clients, but it also helps us. We pointed out that during the Great Depression, like Ford went into the Great Depression outselling Chevrolet 10-1, and where Ford cut their advertising budget during the Great Depression, Chevrolet actually increased it, and they came out of the Great Depression outselling Ford. Nike had the same thing. Like Nike in the 80s, during that economic downturn, they increased their share of voice. They see these times as a way to increase their market share, their share of voice, and they came out of that economic downturn with higher sales than they did going into it. And there are just so many examples at Procter and Gamble. Their leadership has basically just said, like, we never decrease ad spend during recessions. We always increase marketing and ad spend during times of economic downturn, because they just see, because what's going to happen is that their competitors are going to pull back. And when they pull back, you become more visible. And there's, second order effects of pulling back. And the data and the research just shows that when you pull back and you disappear, your brands, your customers see you as someone who doesn't have staying power, and they remember the brands that were visible and actually stayed with them when the times got tough, rather than just in uh, you know uh, just during times that are good.
Yeah, and I didn't realize some of those older ones, but and from a behavioral science perspective, guys, that when there's a lot of emotion, whether it's kind of in people's lives or in society, those brands that are in those areas, especially when they give a positive kind of lift to people that are down, they go into long-term memory. That's how you build equity as well. When times are tough and a brand steps up to give you a little bit of levity, to show that they care, to be a part of your life, those brands remain in the head a lot longer than those brands who try to show up, soon when times are good. They're not remembered. So that's another a big reason from a behavioral science perspective why it works really well. It builds that relationship you really want.
Yeah.
So, so what are some when you realize that you needed to be proactive in this conversation with your clients? Kind of tell us one strategy you tried that fell short, and then what was one that was like, oh, okay, this is a better way to present this.
Oh, yeah, sure. So the strategy that failed was basically just waiting for things to happen, waiting for clients to find out on their own that, hey, either advertising costs are going up, or consumer spending is going down, or cost of goods are going up, or supply chain is going to be hindered or slowed down or impacted. And they sit in that feeling after hearing that news for a while, and they're like, well, we got to do something. Oh, I know what we got to do. Let's call Adlantica and stop everything. So that's the hard that's what we definitely don't want. But now what we try to do is make sure that our clients know about all the problems. First, they hear it first from us. So they hear about Apple's privacy changes from us first, and what that's going to mean for their tracking, for their conversions, for their Facebook ads, and all that stuff. We lay out the problems first, and then we show them the plan for what we're going to do, to ride this wave, or to figure it out, or to fix this problems. And just the confidence level, on behalf of our clients, just go up so much that um, they feel like they're in good hands, and they just trust us to always be on the lookout and do the right thing.
Yes. Is that a part of, would you say that's a part of your culture? Or do you have a group of people, maybe it's just yourself, who's constantly scanning things that could impact your customer? Because some of the big ones are easy, right? The economy, that's fine. But there are technologies like Chat GPT, I'm sure you're hearing all about that. That's going to impact some of your clients one way or another, right? So are you actively got a group looking at that? Or is it just really in your culture now?
It's kind of in our culture, and a lot of it. I mean, culture has to come from the top down, and it is something that I'm really passionate about. Like this Chat GPT thing, everybody was worried about that, and um, I was skeptical that you can write an AI. I mean, everybody's so impressed with ChatGPT, but you got to understand, like, these AIs, there's so many of them, and they can usually do one thing really well within a framework given certain rules. And if you think like that's going to just on its own, just based on that, just going to outperform everything that humans can do, like, I was really skeptical about that. So I, again, just trying to be proactive, we had chat gpt write ads, and then we had ads that we wrote, and we split tested it, and we showed one of our clients that, look, the bot, the AI is not going to be able to do better marketing or advertising than us. So just thinking about ways we can be proactive, to test new technologies, to stress test them, and also make our clients aware of what's coming up, how we're going to react, how we're going to reposition, and how we're going to react.
What do you tell them, like in the news right now with Amazon, Facebook, Google, Twitter? They're laying off thousands of
Mhm,
employees.
mhm.
What's what's coming up in the mind of the client? Are they concerned about that? What's going on? Do we still advertise there? What are our options?
Yeah, so every platform really needs to be looked at differently. I'll just say, think about Facebook and Google. Yes, they're having unprecedented layoffs, but this is on the back of unprecedented hiring growth. I mean, the rate at which these companies hired was crazy. I mean, Amazon hired 500,000 people in 1 year. So when they lay off 30, 33, 37,000 people, yeah, that's a lot of layoffs, but that's nothing compared to going on a hiring spree and hiring 500,000 people. Now, layoffs, they do impact consumer spending and consumer confidence and all these things, as I know Will probably knows a lot more about this than I do. But and one thing that one of our biggest successes during 2021 was that we had a client reach out to us right in the beginning of 2021. And they were working with the largest performance marketing agency in the world. I mean, these guys are huge. They're managing over $3 billion of ad spend. And they have one of the largest teams, um, incredible group of professionals. They have a lot of data. I mean, just imagine the amount of data you can mine to predict, consumer trends and market trends and things like that. But they reached out to us because they weren't really happy with the performance of their campaigns working with this incredible agency. So they reached out to us, and this was at a time of 2021, right? 2021 was the year of economic downturn, high rate of layoff, unprecedented, interest rate hikes, and all of this stuff. And this company was in, I will just say, like, the automotive industry. They weren't selling cars, but the sales for their products was directly related to number of new car sales. So when number of new car sales were up, their business did well. When number of new car sales were down, effectively their business went down. So this is the environment that we took over their advertising. And year over year, I mean, we've grown this brand. They're like, we've grown their revenue year over year by over 400%. And their ROI is, the case study has just been posted on our website. Their ROI is over 4,000% now. And the reason why we were able to do that during such a difficult climate was because of what I learned through Will and other people Will has introduced me to about consumer behavior. People, and the data just shows people don't stop spending during the time of recessions, but they need a different message. You need to talk to them about security. You need to talk to them about trust. You need to talk to them about hope. You need to show them how your product is a great value. So all of these different messaging changes we did, the different campaign structures we did, the different audiences we went after. You can still grow during a recession, even when people are getting laid off, even when there's some huge changes happening on these ad platforms and things like that. There's always opportunities if you understand your audience, if you understand how they behave, you understand how they decide, how they buy, and which one of those purchases make them happy.
Excellent. It's a great segue, by the way. Our common denominator here in this conversation is Will's book, Marketing in Mind States. It's how to get your content to not be a one size fits all. Just what Mehrab was talking about is that the message had to change based on the state of mind that the folks are in. And if you're sensitive to that, understand that, you move from your basic message for whatever the situation is to reflect or honor the state of mind that folks are in. So if you don't have this book, your content that you're making is a one size fits all, and you can't take advantage of what was just demonstrated.
That's right. Hey, Rob, do me a favor. Let's take a step back, because you just started this agency in 2018. But what were you doing beforehand? What made you make this? That's a big jump, right, for anybody to start their own business. So tell me about your story and how you got to that point where you decided, I'm going to go ahead and start my own agency.
Oh, well, This is an interesting story. So I moved to Dallas because I was hired to work as a director of operations and marketing for a startup that was here in Dallas. Um, and I'm not gonna. And it was like a media company, and we created a lot of content, and we had an app, and we were selling monthly subscriptions and all those things. And I worked for 5 years and just gave my entire life to growing this company and building this company. We grew um, the number of employees we had. We grew the number of products. We grew the audience, just everything. It was tremendous growth, but it took a lot out of me. I never worked such long hours for so long in my life. And something happened one day. All of a sudden, one day, I got an email from a BuzzFeed reporter, and she basically showed me what she was about to run. And I was shocked and kind of floored. It was a story about our CEO and how he was married and he had a lot of children. But it was screenshots of conversations he was having with women all around the world and pictures he was sending them. And it wasn't good. And like there were screenshots of like hush money he had wired them, and a lot of stuff. And I didn't respond because I was just finding out this thing that apparently this this reporter had gathered. Um, and soon after, that business completely tanked, and everything that I worked and so many other people worked so hard to build. Like the employees started getting laid off, the customers started canceling their subscription, we started losing money. The CEO and like spent all the company's money on lawsuits and suing people for revealing these stories and things like that. And there was other crap in there too. But I just slowly watched that company that we built over the last 5 years just start to fade away and fall apart over the next 6 months. It was very quick. And after that, I kind of told myself, like, I'm not going to do this again for someone else. That if I'm going to work this hard and put in this much effort, like, I'm not going to do it for someone else again because of this horrible experience that I just had. So we had a lot of experience in marketing because we were marketing events and apps and products and physical products like books and clothing and so many things. And subscription business is one of the hardest businesses you can be in because you got to worry about acquiring a customer. You got to worry about keeping that customer long enough that you make your money back. You got to worry about churn. You got to worry about your customer acquisition cost, your 30-day lifetime value, your 60-day lifetime value, 90-day, 120-day lifetime value, all this stuff. And it just turned our marketing. I mean, when we were working with this company, I mean, we all use Zoom today, but we had a webinar to promote one of our apps. We had grown this audience so large. The webinar had so many people coming to it, registered for it, that I was actually on a phone call with the CEO of Zoom, Eric Yuan, and who was a multi-billionaire now. He wasn't a billionaire then. Zoom wasn't public. I was talking to him about how are they going to handle this 120,000 people that are showing up to our live Zoom webinar. They had never done something like that before. So we had just incredible tech capabilities, marketing capabilities, copywriting capabilities, email marketing, advertising capabilities. So I decided to like slowly rebuild a marketing agency to offer these services and all these expertise we had to other brands that needed it with that small team I was working with at that company. That's how the agency started.
Wow.
That's almost out of. So let me ask you, before then, did you ever consider yourself wanting to be an entrepreneur yourself? Did you ever even have those conversations? I never did. I was pushed into it, maybe not in the same way, but I was pushed into it. And I'm glad I did. Did you have that feeling beforehand, do you think?
Well, yes, because I was always trying to do something on the side. Like
Yeah.
I had a small Amazon business that, well, I mean, when I exited, it wasn't small anymore, but like I was working on how to grow that Amazon business, learn Amazon advertising and Facebook advertising and other kind of e-commerce businesses. But when I moved to Dallas, I put everything on pause. Like I didn't focus on anything else. So what ended up happening was that I was like, okay, I have to walk away from this. I just decided to kind of go out and build something on my own with our team, and not go back to working for someone else, because then I just feel like you just have so little say in how it all turns out and how things pan out and what happens.
Yeah,
We're-
sure.
I'm relating, but did you have the feeling of like you're at a certain age and here you had invested all of this into being good at what you do, and then all of a sudden it's just the rug's pulled out and this is what I have to show for all this effort?
Man, I don't know if we have enough time to get into that. Um, I have a very, very um, I have a very high sensitivity to time, um, and that's because when I was 19, I got very sick, and no one knew why I was sick. But I lost like 30 pounds over a month, span of like month or two. Didn't have an appetite, and I was violently shivering at night with like a high fever, so much so that like my teeth, you can hear like in the next room of like my teeth chattering. Like that's how bad were like my shakes were. Um, and eventually, I found out that I had stage 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma. The cancer, it was, in my neck, it was in my chest, it was in my lungs. Um, and I didn't know if I was going to recover from that. And it actually ended up being like a 5 year um, kind of struggle and a fight to try to overcome it. But that really gave me a really, really high appreciation, not just for my time, but for everyone else's time. Um, and I always operate under the premise that my life expectancy is about 50 years. And at that time, I was like in my early 30s, and now I'm 37. So I'm always doing the math, and I'm thinking I have 13 years. Everything
Yeah.
I got to do it now. And so one of the things that I say to myself is that I never say tomorrow. If there is something that I need to do, like I'll figure out how to do it today. I'll figure out how to get this job done today. I'll figure out how to get this task done today. I'll figure out how to spend time with my family today. I'll figure out how to build that Lego with my son today. I'll figure out how to go, for that drive or for that walk with family, today, not tomorrow, not, yeah. So to answer your question, yes, I had a very high sensitivity to, I wasted 5 years and, what do I have to show for it and things like that. Yeah.
Wow.
I have that conversation with myself frequently.
Let me talk a little bit about that, or let me ask you about that perspective. So you've given two kind of perspectives on humans, or one was you had a boss that you saw maybe some of the worst things, and how he could take the passions and drive of all these people, and because of some really bad decisions, hurt a lot of people, himself probably
Mhm.
included. And then you have this other perspective of yourself, of stage 4 Hodgkin's, right? And that perspective must impact in some way um what you've learned, or what you expect from your relationships. And is there can you give me a sense, if you can, that perspective, and how does it translate to maybe how you've grown your own company, right? You've got, I don't know how many employees you have, quite a few, I guess. How is that perspective of seeing the best in people, and with yourself driving through stage 4, but also sometimes the worst in people, like how has that perspective helped you run your agency outside of the time, because that's
Yeah.
a big one, right? I know that time matters to you for sure.
Well, I don't know about other people, but I know that I try to be hyper aware about the best and worst things about myself. And because of that, I have really high expectations of myself, of how I speak to people, how talk to people, how I communicate with people, how I treat people. Um, and I think that respect and honesty, and one of the things that we talk about in our agency is that our two core values when working with each other is respect and honesty. Always be honest about how you feel. But in that effort, remember that we owe each other respect. We deserve respect from one another. So that's how I think about myself, and that's how I tell my team to think and act and behave with each other. Now, about seeing the worst in people, it takes a lot for me to start thinking about the worst in people. I mean, I see shortcomings a lot, but the way I respond to that, especially with our team, is how can I give you tools? How can I give you hope? How can I want you to want more from yourself and expect more from yourself and think that you can achieve more? Like, that's the kind of mindset I have. Um, and I think that was all built from my long time in the hospital, dealing with a lot of pain, a lot of anguish, and just a lot of uncertainty about whether I'm going to make it or not.
Yep.
I think about that feeling of wasting the 5 years.
We got to come back to those 5 years
Well,
that I wasted.
Well, here's my point is though, I wrestled with the same thing. I didn't waste 5 years. I wasted about 15. Is how I could have looked at it until I realized I was just getting an MBA on what
Mhm.
I wanted to pick what not to do out of that experience
Mhm.
and what would I do if I had been in charge. And it brought me to a point where I had to I could sit and be critical of, we could sit and be critical of this guy that threw this away, right?
Mhm.
Or we could go, well, why are you sitting around here? Why didn't you go start your own thing? Well, it's scary. That's why. Right. And I had to call myself out on that and put my money where my mouth was, so to
Mhm.
speak. And that was a big hurdle
Yeah.
for me. But that's the way I came to my call to action, so to speak, that
Yeah.
so I'm just relating with your story, and I don't want you to feel like it was wasted, but I think it was it really helped cement you on the path that you're on now.
Yeah, I would agree. Like, all those experiences, all of our experiences lead us to where we are.
Mhm.
So how is this, kind of this journey? How is that shaping how you define success and do it for like your personal success, but also business success?
Um, I'll talk about the personal first.
Yeah.
Personal success, I don't know if I'll ever feel like, hey, I'm successful. I don't think that about myself now. And I don't know if I ever will. And I realize that no matter how much money I make, I just never think I'm successful. I probably need to unpack that with somebody at some time. Um, but success to me is when I came to the realization when I was in the oncology ICU that this is the best time of my life, because there is probably, even though I have stage 4 cancer and I'm in the oncology ICU, I mean, no one was even allowed in my room. Like, if I took a bite of an apple, like, it would probably kill me. And I was just alive, like, intravenously through like fluids and vitamins and whatever they gave me.
Mhm.
But I came to the realization that even though I'm in this position, there are probably and I'm not exaggerating, there are probably billions of people on this earth who probably wish that they could trade places with me. And I think about the father or the mother, the parent whose 2-year-old daughter has leukemia and she has a death sentence. I bet that parent would trade places with me if it meant that their 2-year-old became healthy. I bet there are people that have to watch their family starve or watch their family go through persecution, who would want to trade places with me. So this is an this is something that I tell people who are close to me, who I feel like would listen to advice, that you have to feel like you have to believe that whatever year you're in, whatever. So I tell myself like 2020 was the best year of my life. 2022 was also the best year of my life. Why was 2022 the best year of my life? I have everything I need. I'm healthy. I'm not sick. My son is young. He's obsessed with me, and he's not going to be like that forever. Like what more? Like I think like I'm probably, even if I make millions of dollars in the future, or billions, whatever. I don't think I'll make $1 billion, but I'll probably always look back at this time and think that, man, those were the best years of my life. So from a personal perspective,
Your
like,
perspective.
yeah, I just always feel that this is the best because I have this, I have that, I can do this, I can do that. I don't have to do this, or I don't have to do that, and I don't have to suffer through that, or I don't have to suffer. So that's from a personal perspective. That's how I look at it.
So now when you're thinking that way, this is the best year of our lives. Okay.
Mhm.
You're probably preparing your customers for a tough year of their lives. How do you flip that and present that to them?
Yeah. So hard doesn't mean bad, right? Um,
Yeah.
right. So like I had hard years, but they weren't bad. I made it out of it, and I grew, thankfully, as a person. I look back at who I was before I had cancer. I didn't like that person very much. And I think I needed that hardship, and a lot of good came out of it. And just how that client I was talking to you about earlier, that client who had, in 2020, in 2022, I'm sorry, last year, when their whole industry was down, their sales were down, everything was getting harder, all the signals were negative, people were losing their jobs, interest rates were going up. That was a hard year. But if we have a strategy or a plan, and we have the mindset that, hey, we're going to figure out how to make this better. I mean, their sales year over year was up 400%. So um, we don't have to think that just because times are hard that it's going to be bad. Um, it just means you need to figure out what you got to do. You need to figure out how you need to pivot. You need to figure out your new strategy, and those are times for some really amazing, when really amazing growth can happen.
All right, well, let's we're getting pretty close to the end of the show. Tell me, is this year or maybe in the next 2 years, are you working on anything kind of strategically or collectively, whether it's through technology or relationships or whatever? Are you excited about doing some new things with the company?
Well, yes. So I really want to get more into this role where we work with clients, not just because they need a team to execute advertising, but really want to get more into um, working with clients about understanding how their customers are going to behave in the future, and preparing not just strategies, but more importantly, like products, preparing, activation, key moments that are going to be able to serve those customers coming up. What are some of the industry changes? What are some of the technology changes? What are some of the geopolitical changes? Like this is, I feel thankful that we've kind of got this advertising thing figured out. Like I feel like you give us an account, and we're going to figure out how to improve the performance no matter what. We're going to figure that out. So I don't want to say that's easy, but I feel like that part we can do. So what's the new thing? I feel like that companies don't pay attention to as much as they should, even big ones. I'll tell you an example, Will, and of course, Steve. Um, in December, a director of a new product. She is the director of this new product that's not out yet within a company whose annual revenue is $350 billion. And they created this product and this prototype and this website. And I can't tell you how much they missed the mark with their audience, because they think all of their audience looks the same. And what I tried to point out to them, that look, within your audience, there's people who don't care. There are people who don't care. There are people who care but don't trust it, the product. There are people who trust the product and the idea, but they don't trust your company. They don't trust your brand to do it, right? Because of things that have happened with your brand in the past. And then there are people that this is just too technical and they don't understand. And you can't just lump all these people together and speak to them with one message. How do you speak to someone who doesn't understand what this is, and someone who understands what it is very well but doesn't trust your company? How do you use the same message on those two people? So companies at the very low end and at the very high end of the spectrum do not care to do the work and to figure out what people actually want or what people actually look like. And until you have that figured out, I mean, you can create some really amazing tech and it's just not going to go anywhere.
Wow.
So that's something I think, Will, when we met last year, I told you, like, this was what I'm really passionate about. I'm still trying to build this. I'm still trying to, we're still trying to build it and work on it and deliver it to more clients.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. You figure it out now. You get there. Okay. But then something changes and you need to be sensitive and adjust again that message.
Yeah.
Even once you land on the message today, doesn't mean it's relevant 60 days from now. You gotta be aware of that, right, Will?
That's right. We go through different mind states, right? I talk about that on page 184 of my book. But no, you're right. Yeah, very much so. Very much so. Well, hey, Mehrab, this has been a great conversation. Thanks for sharing your journey, your perspective.
Thank you.
Especially the humanity side of it. You know, Steve and I, during the pandemic, we shifted a lot to the show, turning it just about like human beings, because we lost a lot of that. And I think if we talk about what the pandemic and what kind of the society has brought us in the last 2 years, it's been that we're all just human beings trying to make the world hopefully a little bit better place. And so I love you bringing in the perspective of human, kind of the human side, but also how are you using these human connections to build people's brands, which helps other people, it's ultimately a great win-win for all of us. So Steve, why don't you summarize everything you've learned today's show?
That'll be
and wrap us up.
Yeah, no, this is awesome. It's amazing, guys, how impactful your messaging can be. That the effort that you put into that, adjust it, test it, just the messaging in this is huge. It's the age-old problem. It's like the leaders that we know, they dialed in their message and they really had an advantage. And that's all we're doing, is we're helping our folks that we want to serve communicate better. So I love it. It was really excellent. Turn on a little music here. Okay, this is usually when we watch Will dance. We throw him a few softballs, but Rob, tell folks.
I'm going to be really disappointed if that doesn't happen.
No, you're the center of attention today, for Rob, not me. You're the center.
No, you've been on the hot seat today. You did a good dance. You really did connect, and good job. So, if folks have been listening to you, how can they connect with you and follow up, Rob?
Oh, I mean, I would love to connect on LinkedIn with anyone who wants to talk. I mean, I'm always up for meeting interesting people, especially if it's to talk about marketing or new technologies and how to use these tools to make people happier.
Awesome. This has been the Mindstate Marketing Hour. This is a human understanding model that Will presents to us. It's how you can use science to connect with the clients. William Leach. When you were in trouble, was it William?
Oh, it was William John.
William
If I was in a
John.
lot of trouble, it's Willie John. That's when I was in serious trouble, Willie John. But yeah, you bring in the middle name and all hell will break loose.
So, Will, you're not in trouble, but if folks want to reach out to you and learn more about how you can help them dial in their messaging, which has been really the point's been dialed in today for sure.
Yep. Hey guys, you can always reach me at mindstategroup.com. We have tons of free resources, including this podcast, but probably over 100 different blog articles at this point talking about how to use behavioral science to understand your customer and to drive your brand. So reach out to me at mindstategroup.com to learn more about my philosophy on life and a little bit more about marketing too. So come out to mindstategroup.com.
That's right. And if you don't have Will's book, Marketing the Mind States, if you're not wearing the gloves, if you're not carrying around the little, what is that? The wand?
It's a wand. But I was going for the orchestra, like the conductor of the orchestra, and then I found out that after the print's already done, like, actually, I think that's a magician. So either way works for the metaphor I'm trying to use. So it's like magic. We're gonna help you bring magic to your marketing. Either way.
I prefer the orchestra. I think that's great. But get the gloves, get the book, get your messaging right, dial it in for the folks. All right, and then we're going to roll this out. Did you know we've got this nice outro? Kristen, thanks. That this is a podcast. You can listen to this podcast. You don't just have to watch it on video in all your favorite places, such as iHeartRadio, Buzzsprout, and on YouTube. It's the Mindstate channel. You can share it with your friends, tell your mom and dad, all your friends and neighbors, and we'll see you next week on the Mindstate Marketing Hour. Will, thanks. Mehrab, excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
I'm Steve Brown, you're a host, and we're out. So let's all sing a little song while